Victor and I met about 20 years ago when I started teaching at USC. Probably for the first year or two, I didn't know whether it was Regnier or Regnier, and then I assumed it was Victor Regnier. Then I met him and I realized he wasn't Regnier, although he certainly could be Regnier. He's Regnier.
Vic and I were born right after my dad came back from the war, born in Kansas City, and that's where my dad started building houses. It was a three-generational family where my dad and mom, my brother, sister, and I, and my grandmother lived with us, and was really an elemental and integral part of the family. My dad he was a tough guy. I mean, he was tough in business. He was tough on his kids. I mean, he had high standards. My mother, on the other hand, was the empathetic side of the equation. My grandmother lived with us the entire time that I was growing up. She always had a room at the house and would be there to take care of us and made us tapioca pudding every afternoon. I think Vic learned from my father, you never give up. You focus on doing it right the first time as opposed to doing it over and over again. I mean, this phenomenal work ethic that my father had, my brother has that in spades.
I'm a kid that grew up in East LA. I'm kind of the old timer at 29. Vic is this young, skinny kid. He had finished a dual degree at Kansas in architecture and architectural engineering. And I thought, this kid, somebody has to look out for him or he's not going to survive in Los Angeles, frankly. But we got along famously, and I think he really was, for me, my younger brother.
Victor was then doing a lot of research related to communities and cities. Of all the people I met at USC, I was most impressed by him. Victor had a much broader view of architecture, which meant he looked like somebody that I could work with.
That was actually a centerpiece or theme of the Andrus Gerontology Center when it was created, to do an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary study of aging. I think the work that Vic and I did in the late 1970s and early 1980s is a perfect example of that. It's often very clear that no single discipline holds the answer. It may take 2 or 3 or 4 disciplines to attack the issue from different directions.
I first met Victor Regnier around about the mid-1970s, and he had an open mind. The idea of bringing the services into housing for the aged was a new idea, and that new idea was something that Victor Regnier has always symbolized.
There isn't anybody in the country I can think of that has the balance that Vic does for design, building, understanding of seniors, and how to put it together.
Victor is one of the most stimulating, intriguing, perhaps bizarre human beings I know, because his ability to focus on a topic for an extended period of time seems limitless.
The way I see it is that Victor is the poster boy for multitasking.
My first publication dealt with research that was conducted, for the most part, in nursing homes. Many of these buildings were constructed in the 1970s, and they were modeled after hospitals, and they were pretty wretched places to live. In those days, people were placed in nursing homes because they had incontinence or memory loss. Not a very good reason to go into any kind of healthcare setting, because those aren't healthcare problems. People with dementia walked up and down the corridors all day. They almost always used double-loaded corridors, and rarely did they have any kind of natural light. Noise was a constant problem, glare was a problem, and of course if people fell, they were hard surfaces, they often injured themselves. Sleep disturbance and noise was a constant problem. And these were places that families didn't want to come to visit. And when they did, there wasn't any place for them to go.
What's really interesting and special that Victor has helped us understand was research. And so his studies in Scandinavia, his studies in Europe generally, his studies in Los Angeles, there was so much more to be known about it if you would only study it more specifically and more carefully and in a rigorous way.
So his research in that area has become powerful for the whole field of gerontology and for elderly housing, but wonderful for us.
As everybody knows, Vic's written a lot. Articles, books, all kinds of publications. What he's brought to research, particularly in the senior living, has been the use of case studies.
It's an amazing experience to travel with him and see what he sees, what he looks for, and the ideas that you get from that of how to do the next development you're working on, make it even better.
Vic on a tour is like the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going and going and going.
He's intense. He's serious. He's up early. You know, you're exhausted traveling with Vic.
You know, his jacket is always open. He walks like with a wind around. It's the energy that is walk around him. It's the chi that walk around him. Very a pleasure to sense that kind of mobility. I would say mobility not for the purpose of separation, but threading things together. Something very important.
And then he's always got another question, another room he wants to see. Vic asks a lot of good questions, but he asks a lot of questions.
There isn't anybody as particular or as thorough or as well prepared I've never experienced in my life than Vic.
Victor got it there, he understood it, and he photographed it. Started putting together a series of new books about what was to become assisted living. And then by giving these lectures across the country, influencing other people, and certainly influencing his students here at USC.
The second major book that I wrote came out of this experience of visiting Northern Europe. And when I was there, I saw 100 different buildings from 5 different countries, and it was really unbelievable. It was a real eye-opening experience for me and also the people I shared it with. You know, one of the things that they did differently in Europe, instead of classifying their long-term care buildings in hospital use categories, they classified them as residential, and then they linked to them food services, personal care services, and healthcare services. Of course, these environments weren't just residential environments. They were really designed for the physiology and the special characteristics of older people. Residents with dementia were involved in a range of different kinds of activities, setting the table, bussing dishes, even going to shop for groceries. Residents were given choices. They could get up when they wanted to. They could eat when they wanted to, or they could go to sleep when they wanted to. All of these were things that they did on their own schedule, like you and I would at home, and not on some institutional schedule. They encouraged individuals to do as much as they could for themselves and to carry out the kinds of activities that they always did throughout their life. Almost all of the nursing home rooms were single occupied, and people had their own little tea kitchen and bathroom. And when a resident would move in, they'd bring their own furniture just to kind of make the place their own. You know, one of the things that was common over there were these large plant-filled atriums where residents could go in the winter and could exercise. Probably the most important lesson that I learned was that about half of the people that I saw in U.S. nursing homes didn't need to be there. They didn't need to be in a healthcare setting that looked, smelled, and acted like a hospital.
In 1983, Jim Barron, who was dean of the School of Gerontology, and I, we put together this joint appointment. It was the first such appointment ever in the world, I guess, between gerontology and architecture.
You know, he had gone to the University of Illinois from USC, but we wanted him back because he had that spark. He was willing to talk to the sociologists, the psychologists, the health people, and others about the functions of designing facilities for older people.
Thinking about it from the point of view of the elderly, you get out of your own skin and out of your own experience and wonder what it's like for them. And when you get used to wondering what it's like for them, Victor would tell us, then you might not only think about what it's like for the elderly, but what it's like for everybody. You could consider other people too. So it was a way of connecting all of the issues of architectural design to life.
Victor stepped forth when no other faculty seemed to be interested or willing to, and he became interim dean in 1992.
The quality that I remember most, that I would characterize Victor's leadership with, is just sort of frankness and candor. You know, we have tough things to do, and this is the way it is, and, you know, it's an act of respect, basically, that I'm sharing the truth with you and cutting to the chase.
Victor had a big challenge of, again, kind of balancing the budget, and I think that he looked at many different ways. The outreach to the USC community, encouraging non-majors to participate in our minor, to take architecture courses. That brought in new tuition revenue, which was terrific, and it also helped at many different levels. The study abroad program in Malaysia, Parkinson's Spirit of Urbanism Award, the placement program, really it was because of him that we started our firm fairs. Victor also, I think, had a great sense of where the profession was going. And it was uncanny that just before the AIA unveiled the requirement for continuing education unit requirement, that Victor launched the Institute for Professional Development. I believe that Victor's great contribution and a legacy that perhaps many don't know was his success and ability to present to the university a balanced budget and a school that was healthy in its fiscal matters. And I believe it allowed Bob Timmie and his administration to come in, obviously on a very sound fiscal foundation.
Victor would bring his class here every year for 10 years for his Great Houses course. The house full of students would be standing around spellbound, listening to every word. The thing that was so great about it was that Victor really understands Pierre's work and appreciates it. For Pierre to be able to relax and let Victor talk about his house was remarkable. Usually he would be nudging or interrupting, but Victor really nailed it and was able to pass it on to the students.
Our second semester of graduate studio, he came in, introduced himself, and within the first few minutes of meeting him, he passed around 3-inch binders full of everything you could possibly want to know about how to design a children's museum. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this guy is intense.
The students in that class, that studio alone, I think, would have been a reason for coming to USC graduate school. That offering. I mean, Victor arranged office visits to, most of the best architects in Los Angeles. So when he goes to Morphosis, Tom Main sits down with the students and talks to them about his designs for children's museums. And he takes such incredible pleasure in it. I mean, it's really nice and incredibly unusual.
My newest book has looked at how all of these European ideas have been embraced and integrated into long-term care in the United States, and also some of the new innovations that have occurred in the last decade in Europe. Although many of the new buildings that we have currently are built to hospital standards, they don't look like hospitals. They're residential in character, and the people that live there really appreciate that. They're places where family members can spend time with their loved ones, with their mother or their father, where they can take a coffee or play cards or watch other people enjoy themselves. We have a lot more dementia buildings that allow residents to live in a protected but yet stimulating environment. Using new technologies, we can have two-story entry spaces, we can have interconnecting rooms, corridor alcoves, we can have all kinds of more open and connected spaces than we had before. We've been able to eliminate that labyrinth of solid corridor walls and then destination rooms. Buildings provide a range of edge condition spaces like arcades and three-season porches, trellis areas, and bay windows. Large windows allow more light to come in, and low sill heights allow you to be able to see the lush landscape on the outside, even from the bed. The spaces are designed to control sunlight better and are much more accessible, even for people in wheelchairs. These buildings use architecture to celebrate and enhance the quality of life for older people.
But I think Victor recognized along the way that to have the biggest possible impact, you have to deal with the private sector. The private sector can be harnessed and you can move them in the direction of doing social good.
As Vic's interests moved to the design of housing spaces, he found natural collaborators in corporations that were trying to design these spaces and build them for the general public.
My favorite days every month are my design days with Victor. I think of him as our chief design officer. He has a passion for this. He organizes the work for us. He critiques it. And you cannot be a scholar or add to the scholarship in a field unless at your core you're really interested in research. I love the fact that he is constantly in the field. For a senior living environment, this understanding how it feels and lives, you have to be out there. And I'm not sure how to put this, but Victor at his core understands what it's like to be an 81-year-old woman, and understands that reality better than anybody else I know.
So whether you're doing affordable housing, which is what I've specialized in, or high-level market rate housing for seniors, they're so much better because of the influence, because of the teachings that Vic has put out there.
Virtually all of the innovations that we've done have been done in collaboration with Victor. So our early pioneering work in assisted living had his fingerprints all over it. Our new Condos for Life concept, they're all innovations that we've collaborated on.
I'm particularly interested in a new building type that I studied in Rotterdam in 1999. It's an apartment and condominium mixed-use building that allows individuals to age in place, and services are brought to them. They don't have to move into a nursing home. The residential building is stacked above a grocery store, and it has a large atrium with all kinds of activities that are open to people who are living in the building as well as people who are living in the surrounding neighborhood. Services like personal assistance and medical care increase as a resident's need increases. The Sterling in Woodlands, Texas is currently under development. It's a condominium development that uses these Dutch aging-in-place principles. It has a communication system that allows residents to be in contact with care coordinators, to schedule needed assistance or to call it if there's an immediate requirement. This allows residents to age in place with a range of services, from apartment cleaning to intensive medical care. A small kitchen that utilizes a compact, informal display kitchen design allows residents to take discretionary meals. A swimming pool and exercise therapy center for physical fitness and for wellness. This newest European approach to aging in place has revolutionized long-term care in Northern Europe over the last decade, and hopefully will do exactly the same thing here in the next decade in the United States.
He can really make things happen. And once that thing happens, he can really be a contributive element for that thing. Whatever that thing is, he's really not limited.
It doesn't take long to figure out, and here's a man who's a teacher, he's a dean, he's an author, a joint professor, a Fulbright scholar, one of the 5 national leaders as an advocate for housing for elderly people. These layers keep unfolding, and you realize that this man is not only a true Trojan alumni in representing the school and the university in the highest of ways, but he's a legacy. He's a person that has brought at least 2 professions to another level, as well as creating a life for a significant sector of the population that's better than if he were not to be with us. That is a distinguished alumnus.
I would describe Victor as just one hell of a wonderful human being. If not truly a Renaissance man, probably as close as we'd find today.
Victor cares a lot about his family. There's nothing he wouldn't do for his kids or his wife. And he cares about his friends.
He always writes, he always calls, if he's in town, he always visits. You know, I mentioned that I've always thought of him as, you know, a younger brother, and Vic has been a great brother. Great brother.